We are live. Hey, everybody, just a few minutes late. Here we are live on Funnels and Follow-Up, the show that teaches entrepreneurs how to get people into their funnel. The funnel not being specifically that online funnel that we take hours and hours and days and days and days to build until we go out and hire somebody. No, not that funnel, but the whole concept of a funnel being the way to get people into your world, into your life, into understanding who you are, feed them a little bit of content, feed them some spaghetti and meatballs as well, because that always goes over so wonderfully, and then bring them through the process and turn them into clients, go from prospects to clients, clients to raving fans, and that happens with the follow-up. Today we have Natasha. I always, your name, Todorovic, I always screw up Cowan. And Cowan, I need to know because that is my niece's last name. That is my darling niece Erin's last name, Cowan. So Natasha Cowan of Spiral Dynamics. Natasha is a fellow coach, a friend, an inspiration, the cohort on our accountability calls. She's taken over for me while I try and straighten things out on my end. She is just an inspiration. I can't say enough great things about Natasha. Natasha, how are you today?
I'm awesome. Thank you, Kat. And I just love seeing blue skies and sunshine. That makes me happy.
So here we are today. I am not in the office. I am instead outside of the office, just outside, because that's where the office is. I am cleaning. I am rearranging. I am cleaning. I am throwing stuff out. And that's something we need to do every once in a while. So let's get right to it then. Natasha is, as I said, she is Spiral Dynamics. She's MBA CEO of National Value Center Consulting, owner of the Spiral Dynamics brand. So whether your challenges are resistant to change, cultures in conflict resolution, strategic partnerships, dysfunctional teams, incongruent leadership, strategic implementation, whatever your challenge is in the team, big team, little team, whatever team, Natasha's experience includes unraveling the people side of organizational problems from C-suite to shop floor, enabling leaders to make informed change choices. Don't go out there and just flip and change. You've got to make informed choices. Natasha has had more than 25 years experience applying her proprietary Spiral Dynamics Culture DNA survey, leadership assessments, and change readiness index to predict hurdles. Yeah, you can predict those. What? Yes. To get over those changes and what you need to lead through it. She's delivered over 100 plus Spiral Dynamics certification programs in over 14 countries, like nice passport, 5 continents. Natasha, did you do it on Antarctica yet?
No, no Antarctica. No, I don't like being cold.
I know, but you can get one of those little frigate ships and you could do it on the ship and then just run out and then touch Antarctica and say, I did it on 6 continents and then run back. All right. Fine.
Well, go look at penguins in the zoo. I can do that.
Okay, we can make believe. We can, even the Phoenix Zoo in 120-degree weather, we have penguins somewhere in the zoo. All right, so let's just jump right in. What was the first significant change you remember having to tackle in your life? Because change is huge.
God, Kat, there's so many. I don't remember this, but I do remember the consequences of it. I was born in the former Yugoslavia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so my parents wanted to get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. So my father had to sneak out, and then my mother had to kind of follow. And I think my first change that I remember was being on an airplane as a little kid. And I mean, I had to learn a whole new language. And there was always like a disconnect between my parents and the world around us. And I found myself kind of translating between these worlds. And then we moved to Canada, French Canada. So there's another language.
Now we're up to 3.
Well, and then, the biggest, most traumatic one was, as losing my husband, my business partner, the love of my life, my everything. So, I mean, there've been a lot. So, a lot.
So we jumped right into change, and why do we jump into change? So what is it about spiral dynamics, people, change, transformation? Why did we jump right into change and talking about change? There's a reason.
Well, because things are changing. And you know what? When we hear the word change, our brains literally shut down. We go into fight or flight, and then we can't read what's going on around us. And the one thing that we are going to have to grapple with, the most important thing in our lives, is we have to learn how to cope with change internally and around us. And our approach lays out at least the predictable pieces of change in human nature. So if we could get our arms around the things that are going to be predictable, the things that are going to come at us no matter what, it's easier to deal with the things that are completely random and out of this world.
Then, all right, now you've got me and everyone else who's watching this sort of, change? While we try to make changes, and when we make changes, we create a trajectory. Change is unpredictable, even if we plan. So what is it?
Yeah,
tell us, tell the world.
Well, they're the random things that just kind of like hit us out of nowhere, right? That we weren't expecting, that no one had control over, or maybe that we were blind and oblivious to, right? So the ones, as an example, I was in the fashion business before I got into training and development, before I got my MBA, and I was in fashion in Canada. And there was this thing called NAFTA, right? And all the lumberjacks out west were talking about this NAFTA thing. And, you're in fashion, you don't pay attention to the lumberjacks, because what do lumberjacks know, right? Within 6 months, I watched my industry completely disappear overnight. And everybody was saying, who would have known, right? Nobody could have predicted it.
Except the lumberjacks
knew. They knew that was going to happen. So there are things that we're, blinded to, oblivious to. We've got our, fingers in our ears, we've got our hands over our eyes. We're not looking, we're not paying attention. They're there, they're predictable. And that's the area where we work in, because in human nature, change is predictable. And so if I am changing as a human being, there are particular phases and steps and approaches and things I'm going to push against and pull back on and experience internally and externally. There are those big brush strokes that we're able to predict and walk people through, which is why coaches and consultants certify to use our Change Readiness Index and some of our other tools, because they're working with human transformation. And then things we can't predict, but we can sure help ourselves and one another through those predictable phases to become more resilient, to absorb things better, to become more functional, to work more effectively with who we are and who we have around us. And that's kind of what we're doing in these times today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you brought up a word. We spoke about it this morning. I am working with this word for my own personal talk that I'll be delivering in January of 2021, TEDx, yay me. But nice little plug there, Catherine.
Everybody get on that.
Right? Resilience.
Yeah.
Resilience. One of my favorite authors, Greg Braden, talks about resilience and developing. And now, we're still in the middle of the crisis that was supposed to last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 months, however many months we're in it now. 5, 6, 7 months. Yeah, 7 months we're in the crisis. How does resiliency play a part in change?
Well, so when I work with my corporate clients, we have a 12-factor resilience model that we use, and we measure where they are going in and then where they are going out. So it shows them how their resilience on those 12 factors and 12 elements either increased or decreased or shifted. But we've also got our Spiral Dynamics Change Readiness Index, which helps to understand where somebody is, how flexible they are, how change ready or not they are, how stressed out they are, and what size bites of change they can take at this particular time in their lives. Because if we feed change, and it's not always possible, but imagine the metaphor I like to use is you've got a bowl of food, and you can feed the baby and you can feed the football player, which means you're going to feed this bowl of food in different size spoons and different amounts to the baby and the football player, right? And that's how change needs to be absorbed. The right size spoon in the right amounts to the right mouth.
Okay. And so the different aspects of change then have to be addressed at different times in different ways. And that's how you become resilient.
Yeah. So look, we have a 4 kind of piece model around change, right? And we've got to isolate where change is or isn't happening. Okay. And change can be happening at the surface level, right? There's, maybe a belief that's shifting or changing. For some people, that's dramatic and traumatic, right? You believe one thing and then something else happens the next day. So that's surface because it's easier to see. Then we've got the next piece below that, which is what I call connection, but change interpersonally and intrapersonally. So we've got to be self-aware. We've got to be aware of our emotions. We've got to be aware of our reactions. We've got to be aware of other people's emotions and other people's reactions. Right. So everything that is going on internally and in between people is what we've got to have our finger on the pulse of, because the change can be traumatic based on some of our reactions to it.
Okay.
Right. And then we've got what we call context, right? And context is what's happening in the world around us. Now, we don't have a whole lot of control over everything in the world around us.
No,
but
sadly.
but we can, and this is why I got really invested and involved in this work, because watching my industry shut down overnight, and it's like, what the heck happened? How can I be aware? How can I never let shocks and surprises like this ever throw me completely off my life course again, right? So being able to be context aware, and in our research, what we've seen time and time again is the majority of human beings are context blind. So we're not going to see things coming at us, even though there are other human beings saying, hey, it's coming, because we've learned to be aware of these pieces.
Right.
And so contextual awareness. And then the 4th C for change is conceptualizing. How do I, in my mind and my brain, hold this? How do I turn it around? How do I make sense of it? How do I handle it? How do I cope with my particular behaviors and skills and tools with this particular set of changes in the environment, in me, around me, in the contents of the world that I'm living in?
Right. Because we can't control, and we try to do this all the time. We cannot control other people. We cannot control our clients. We cannot control our spouse. We cannot control the weather. We cannot control. However, what we can control is how we react. So if you understand the context, if you can conceptualize, if you can be ready for the change, whatever it is, have these tools ready, you can absorb the change. Now, I just want to jump in. I know that, and you you do these like ridiculously amazing weekends a couple of times a year. One is coming up. I know our podcast is supposed to be evergreen. We'll talk about this. Just whoever, whatever, just copy and paste this. I will try and figure out where on my website I can put it. As you know, I am slightly technically challenged when it comes to my new website and its new home. So tell us about what is going on the weekend of October 29th, 30th, and 31st, is it?
30, 31, and first. Yeah. So
Okay,
Friday,
so
Saturday,
Friday,
Sunday.
Saturday, Sunday. Okay.
Yeah. So we're having an exciting event. I love this event. I also had to come back from losing my husband. And I wanted to have an event that made sense of our work and that gave people amazing value and incredible experience. And that's Spiral Dynamics Live. And so what we're going to do is you're going to receive one of our assessments, which is the Spiral Dynamics Change Readiness Index. And our coaches will do some interpretation for you. We will build out for you a trajectory, a bridge, a pathway out of wherever you are now into whatever is next, and build a platform for your transformation, your pivot, your transition, whatever change you are working on, whether it's personal or professional, wherever you're going. We're going to go through the 8 critical ingredients that you have to get right in order for change to work. So we'll walk you through that step by step. We'll give you a few principles around adult development and how these worlds are shaped psychologically, sociologically. We'll look at connection, and we'll also look at a little bit of history of spiral dynamics and where it came from and the research behind it, because we've got a 70-year background in research that this entire approach was built on. And I hope I don't get killed by a bus. But if I do, then the roots of the truth and, this work is not going to survive. And the more people who delve into this, not at the shallow level of the books and stuff, but really deeply into the nuts and bolts and the guts and soul of human transformation,
Right.
The more possibilities we will have to face what's coming at us in the future. Because I think with some of what we have, Corona is going to be mild compared to some of what's coming. So
this theory, this work, I'm not going to call it a theory because it's not like, okay, this is something I think, whatever. No, this is something that has been proven. So it's this work, this proven science.
Yes. Can I make an adjustment?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Okay. So I love what you just said because it's kind of like a buzz for me. People say theory, and what they mean, what it means in common parlance is I have an idea, right? And I want to check my idea out with you. In science, a theory is what happens after you get the results of all this research. So you have all these data points,
right?
And you're trying to make sense of this data and these results and what's been coming back from your assessment. So the theory itself is actually called the emergent cyclical double helix model of adult biopsychosocial systems development.
I love hanging out with my Brainiac Science friends. I swear I love hanging out with my Brainiac Science friends because it's like, oh yeah, I feel like an idiot now. Cool.
No, you gave me a wonderful launching point because that's what people confuse all the time. It's like theory is something somebody thought of. No, if you're really working with science and you're working with assessments and you're working with measures and tests, you're going to get data that you have to rationalize in some way.
Yeah.
And that the theory is what says this piece of data and this piece of data belong together in this way, because that's how it makes sense. Then somebody else can go back and take that exact same approach and replicate it, they might get different results, they might get the same results, but then you can really adjust the theory. But it's a working premise of how all of that works together.
And for everyone who is watching the show and you're thinking, I am not a scientist, I am not doing this in a laboratory, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, I'm a photographer, I'm a lawyer, I'm a, whatever service-based, health-based, whatever industry you're in, you have to take the data. If all of your flippin' clients are telling you that the purple color in your waiting room is making them anxious, change the friggin' color in the waiting room. That's data. If you keep putting the same ad out there over and over and over again, and you throw good money after bad on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on whatever, and you are not getting a single solitary response, that is data. Learn how to take the theory, learn how to take the data, and put it into a working end result. So when Natasha and I get all sciencey and adorable on you, pay attention. Pay flippin' attention.
Well, and one of our students is doing a dissertation, and so this is super cool because the researcher who he was following had shared a Nobel Prize in economics, right? So genius person.
Yeah, right.
And so he's following her approach. And what they did was they created games so they could understand the human side of economics, right? So before she started positing this approach, everybody was like, well, everybody's rational and we can predict their behavior. And it's like, you can't predict human behavior. There are things you can predict and there are things you can't predict.
No!
And they were doing these games and they were like, why doesn't it always work the same way? So our student took our assessments, gave it to his people who were doing these games. And then all of the divergences and disputes and craziness in the data started to line up beautifully. They were able to explain why it wasn't consistent once they aligned their people buckets according to our approach. So if you know what those people buckets are, if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, if you're a business leader, if you are a parent, then it makes it easier to understand how to work with them. And that's the data that we work with. And that's why we teach coaches and consultants and business leaders and OD people the human side of change.
And we started to touch on it before. You said COVID is going to be the mildest of the changes that it looks like we're going to be going through. So this has nothing to do with, I'm going to guess, correct me if I'm wrong, has nothing to do with the country you live in, the politics of your country, your religion, your race, your nationality, the foods you eat. What does it have to do with? Or what doesn't it have to do with?
Well, let's think about the few things that are possible. Number one, we are able to completely obliterate the entire human species and every life form on the planet minus cockroaches, right? That's the power we have. We are unleashing these little, and I forget what they call these little microbots, right? That are going to be unleashed and let into our bodies, for example, for the purposes of, let's say, great purpose, to kill cancer, right?
That would be great.
What will they do?
Yeah.
Right? We have weapons that can completely, like a microwave, cook a human being, right? We have this incredible technology that, unleashed in the wrong way, can shift life on the planet in the wrong way.
Yeah.
We are wiping out entire species and rainforests. There's so many things that can go wrong. And Chris and I used to talk about a virus that could spread around the world. And, quick one, because I know that your crowd is interested in funnels and follow-up and all of that. I was running some webinars, getting absolutely no response to the webinars. It was kind of sucking really bad. And then I changed a few things. And one of the things I changed was I included, when Chris and I went to Kiev in the Ukraine, and H1N1 was out there.
Yep.
So I included when we were in South Africa when the World Economic Crisis was announced, and we looked at each other and went, "So, what do you do when there's a global economic crisis?" Right? So that was a way to also convey. Chris and I would have conversations once, twice a year about what would happen if there was a global pandemic. And he originally thought it was going to be AIDS, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then he was afraid it was going to be Ebola, right? Okay. I was concerned that it was going to be some kind of a drug-resistant, flesh-eating thing, right? Because that's the horrible thing I could have thought of, right? But we keep talking about this, right? Every, once a year, twice a year, we'd be talking about the global pandemic and how are we going to live through it, right? The kinds of things you talk about, right? And it's like, well, nobody ever saw this coming. Yes, there were people who saw this coming.
Yeah.
They were warning people about this, right? Because now, at this time, it didn't happen in 1912, but at this time, one person on an airplane can go around the world, and the entire world can share the one thing, because we're a social creature.
Yeah.
So probably more than you asked for. Sorry.
No. When you get to know Natasha, you learn you should know how to ask the question correctly. The work transcends what you believe, what you think, because it's based on how we're going to react as a human. And now we've talked about the global pandemic and these big thoughts and these big ideas, and here you are listening to this show going, what the friggin' bleep does this have to do with me? Let me tell you everything. Let me tell you, a couple of episodes ago, I interviewed my good friend and Digby's, co-mommy, Candace Kemp. And Candace is in the event planning industry. Well, that industry is never going to go away. I mean, we have events. There are events all the time. There are hotels and they book and people have events, and entire industry wiped out and redefining itself. Newspapers will never go away. We all want to read our newspapers. We're all going to sit on the F train on the subway going into Manhattan in the morning and read our Kindle, our cell phone. That sexy, sexy touch of newsprint, the ink on your fingers, no longer happens. For me personally, somebody who used to be in the printing industry, that makes me sad. An entire industry gone away. How many other industries, Natasha, can we? And these aren't like wild and crazy industries. These are industries that were created. The event planning and the sound systems and lights and cameras. This is a recent industry that just as quickly went away. What else are we seeing going away from the pandemic?
I interviewed Jeffrey Hazlett, who used to be CMO over at Kodak.
Okay. There's
Do you
some
remember, what was it, Tom Tom?
Tom Tom. Yeah, that was a.
Right?
So for those people who don't know, Tom Tom was a device. There were a couple of them out that would help you get to places. It was the first talking to you map.
And it was so much fun. And I rented a car and they had one and it took me to the restaurant, a field in a neighborhood. Waze gets me there every time.
I like Google Maps, but we all like our thing. These are industries that have gone out. So if I am a business person, I am serving my clients. I'm a photographer and serving my clients. I'm a lawyer and serving my clients. I'm a coach, a consultant, an author. I'm serving my clients. I've got all different kinds of clients in different areas. Why do I need to understand spiral dynamics? Why do I need to understand the DNA of the human mind?
Well, I had a client who struggled for about 2 years to figure out her market niche. That held her back, that stopped her from progressing, that stopped her from moving forward.
Right.
Market niche identification would have changed her business.
Huge.
So, what is the cost of 6 months behind, a year behind, 2 years behind, 5 years missing what's going on in the environment?
Simply by being aware.
Simply by knowing who you are, what you are, how you can tackle change, and understanding what is changing and paying attention to your world and to people in a different way.
Okay. So
for anyone who has had a business partner who let them down, or a spouse who let them down, or maybe you got into business with your spouse, or maybe you got into business with a business partner and you saw somebody else. What was the cost of misjudging that person or your relationship, or misjudging a client, or misjudging somebody you trusted with something important?
Yeah.
And then the upheaval and the havoc that creates in your life.
And it's not just, remember, when you're taking on a partner, when you're going into business with your spouse, and Natasha and I will attest to this. People out there who think you're going to fix your marriage by going into your business with your spouse, don't do it. Don't do it. There was a lot of love in our marriages to have a spouse as a business partner. But Natasha, you talk about, when something goes wrong with that partner, with that other person. And then what we don't think about is when something goes wrong with, as was the case with Barry and I, wasn't our business partner. It was his wife, his brandy new Yoko. You youngsters out there, I'll explain the reference one of these days. Marries a woman who decides that Barry and Catherine are no longer needed in the business. I can run the part that they ran. I can do all this. You need to just go ahead and take over the business. That was huge. That was huge. P.S. She failed miserably, but that's okay. So understanding change, knowing the resilience that you have, understanding how you work versus other people helps you get through this easier.
Yeah. You have to know you. And if you aren't aware, and most people aren't, of their preferences for change, those preferences are going to derail you. You're resisting the very change you need, but it just feels all wrong, but that's exactly what you need. That's going to delay your success.
Okay.
And chasing something you believe is the change you need, and it isn't, is going to delay your success. not being able to tune into your context. Remember, we spoke about context?
Right.
That's going to derail you when you hit your context like a brick wall. And you're not able to work with your own affective experience and others' affective experiences. You could go into something. And I was speaking to a guy, he was a part, this happens all the time. 5 guys in a garage, build something amazing.
Right.
Business grows, it's successful. But then they realize, 10 years in, they've got this massive thing. They've stayed together, but they're not really working well. Technically, it should work. Everyone fits that business properly. But because they've had multiple conflicts with one another that have been poorly resolved, it amplifies, it blows up, it ripples, and then you can't fix it. And it didn't have to happen. Things go off the rails. It didn't have to happen, because if they walked back and captured it before it went off the rails, it would have been so much better.
Address the problem before it happens.
Address the problem before it happens. The next best time to address it is as it's happening. Okay. And the more expensive time is after it's happened, but you still have a chance to pick up the pieces. But you have to pick up the pieces more than a few times. It will be the Humpty Dumpty effect.
All right. We can't put them back together again. The link is here. If you don't get on the if you don't get on the weekend coming up in a week and a half, Natasha refines this, does it again, refines it, does it again. Stay on the list. Get on the list. Understand what she is doing. Natasha, any last words, any last thoughts about change and what we still may be needing to do as a result of this pandemic, which is still going on, and now we're in round 2, it appears?
Yeah, or round 3, or round whatever. Yeah, so the moment you feel yourself pulling back, the moment you feel resistance, the moment you feel fear, pay attention to that, lean into that, and use it as your indicator for getting curious about you, about the world, and about those around you.
Okay. And, when I know a lot of people use the term lean into it. Lean into it, lean into it. What does that mean? It means that something is falling. And for those who are listening on audio, I apologize. It means that something is falling in one direction. What you want to do is in the opposite direction, push toward it. Not to topple it over backwards, but to bring it to a center point where there is balance, where the pressure that thing is putting on you is the exact same pressure that you are putting on that thing. When you lean into something, you become one with it. You see it from a different perspective, and now you can solve the problem more effectively, more efficiently than anything else. I know I like to do that because every once in a while there are terms that we use and we use over again, and we go, well, I kind of, sort of, I think I understand. That's what lean into it means.
Yeah, just move into it. Get curious. Open up. Explore. Don't give in to the I'm going to run.
Huge. Yeah. Natasha, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Thank you for talking about spiral dynamics and for, on a personal level. I mean, I want to let the word, you have been so amazing. Natasha is one of those people that has, helped me get through this. She helps people every day with all kinds of stuff. We're in a mastermind together. We share a coach. We've known each other for quite some time, actually. And she's just one of those people, I talk about them all the time, that helped me through this most difficult thing that happened in my life, because it happened in her life. And she is just so generous. So, Thank you, Natasha.
Love you, Kat. Sending you big hugs. Thank you for having me. Super appreciate and love you.
Love you too. And for everyone, you can catch us on YouTube, Facebook on the Funnels and Follow-Up page, YouTube on Cowan Coaching, and on every podcast player out there. We put up the audio to Cowan Coaching and to Funnels and Follow-Up, so listen in when you're driving so you don't have to watch our pretty little faces. Until next time, everyone. Bye-bye.